define private credit. What is it?
It's literally just banking. It's the stuff that banks always did for centuries. They made loans, right, to companies that needed to grow, or for other reasons, people who needed to buy houses. They made loans. And this has always been the heart and soul of the banking system. Well, in about 2008, during the great financial crisis, for various reasons, a bunch of new regulations came into play, which made it reasonably unattractive, almost unprofitable for a lot of these banks to be in the business. So they backed away because the regulators were worried about them taking too much risk in making the loans. So they added all these new regulations. So a lot of banks, a huge number of banks, backed away from that very traditional lending business they had been in. But companies still needed money. People still needed to buy homes. So who was going to make those loans? And other lenders showed up and filled that need. And this is what has become the so-called private credit industry. It started off with companies that would step in and make loans to corporations that needed money to expand. And then that's called direct lending directly to a company. And then it expanded and expanded beyond that to asset-based loans, things that, for example, were backed up by real estate. And it's grown into a very large segment overall of the entire credit industry in the United States. In fact, the most recent number I saw was it's now up to about $17 trillion of total assets. Well, the U.S. corporate bond market itself is only $11 trillion. So overall, it's a very, very large systemic thing. Everybody is dealing with private credit all the time. And just one last thing I'll say is, the word, again, is private, is misleading in some ways. A lot of the credit that's out there is, the loan is private, but the company is public. So Microsoft, Apple, Meta, blah, 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 they've all got they all owe money on private loans. That is, they don't just loan money, they don't just borrow money through the bond market, they borrow it through lots of ways. So the word private doesn't mean just little companies nobody's ever heard of at all. It just means that the loan isn't a bond.